Hi, I'm Matt Knopfsinger with JFCRx, and I'm talking today about how pharmacies can diversify revenue through looking at different strategies in the marketplace. And I've always been a big history buff, and so I wanted to put it in the context to some degree of my passion for Civil War history. And one of the things that came out of the Civil War was a tremendous amount of innovation, right? Anytime you have times of stress and times of chaos, it also is a time of opportunity. And in the Civil War, we had things like hot air balloons that were used for the first time for reconnaissance. So getting above the clouds, getting above the terrain and seeing what's happening on the ground so that you can make better decisions. Ironclad ships were used for the first time in warfare, and that changed the nature of warfare forever. In our particular model in pharmacy world, you might think about that as looking at new tools to help us defend or go after new opportunities. And so looking at new tools to use. And then there's also workflow innovations that came out of the Civil War. One example of that is we used ambulances for the first time going straight to emergency rooms with patients. So process and automation can also be a key part of that. JFCRx is a pharmacy automation company, but why do you leverage pharmacy automation? Yeah, it can save you money, it can lower labor costs, you can use it as a marketing tool to grow your business, but it can also allow you to reallocate those labor and resources so that you can grow new markets and again, diversify your revenue. So a lot of times in the marketplace, I hear a lot of things as to why diversification of revenue is a challenge. And I've heard some people say things like, "Well, I have this particular automation or this particular system. We like it. Our customers like it. We know what we're doing. We make a lot of money doing it, and so I don't want to change." Well, let's challenge that question. I've heard people say, "Well, I already can't make money doing business in a certain market." So somebody might be really good at servicing ALFs and they think that you can't make money in skilled nursing. Some people might be really good at skilled nursing and don't think you can make money in the mentally disabled market. Well, I think we can look at all those markets and find people successful in their different areas. How do we learn from those experiences and go after new opportunities? Clinical billing, MTM revenue, 6, 7, 8 years ago, a lot of people tried to go after that and it failed. Why did they fail? Not because they don't know what they're doing necessarily. It's because there are not a lot of great tools out in the market. But time has evolved. There are new tools in the market. Let's take a look at those tools. And then there's also that issue of automation and adoption of the packaging format that you have invested in. How do we leverage that automation to go after new markets so that you can maximize your investment? And we'll kind of talk through these things in different ways today. So again, just to summarize, we're looking at 3 major categories. Looking at clinical billing and how we might increase that revenue, looking at automation and how we leverage that to grow new markets, and then looking at total net new markets and how we address those. For example, long-term care at home. There's tools we can use to get to long-term care at home now. There's, you might have invested in a multi-dose compliance packager, whether it's with multi-dose blister or multi-dose pouch. And those tools can be used to go after many different types of markets. I'll just use vitamins as an example. You may have the ability for servicing ALF to go to market and go after family members and caregivers within those buildings with a nutraceutical program. Those are really interesting things to look at, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a moment. When we look at new markets, there's a couple things to look at. And one big area that I think I've been very passionate about personally, but I think you can see, our industry associations are all trying to push in that direction of going after clinical billing and MTM opportunities. And I think one way to think about that is by, let's look at what do other people in the market do. So non-competitive market analysis, look at how we take a patient who we currently have onboarded and monetize them additionally. And one of the ways we do that is by looking at 5-star programs with payers and providers so that we can help them close gaps in care, close their HEDIS gaps, and improve their star ratings. One really interesting way to look at diversifying markets is to say, well, okay, as I said earlier, we've invested in pouch, we've invested in multi-dose blisters, and now I'm going to apply that format to multiple markets. And a large part of that can be done simply through creating labels that are unique and innovative that will address those markets. For example, here you can see I have a pharmaceutical package, but I've marketed towards children. Now, that might be approaching your local colleges or grade schools and targeting those polypharmacy patients within those where, you may have nurses who occasionally have to intervene in the passing of those medications. And now you give them a very convenient way to do that with a patient who could be potentially valuable to your pharmacy. You could use the exact same product to generate multi-dose nutraceutical packs. So now I've created a relationship with a children's hospital, an elementary school, a child daycare program, and now I leverage that opportunity to market vitamins and nutraceuticals. And you can do the exact same thing with pouch packaging. So lots of really interesting market applications for this, including things like the things we all as a long-term care pharmacy industry have probably done, from developmentally disabled to skilled and assisted living. Let's add nutraceutical to that. Let's add long-term care home application to that. Looking at PACE programs, getting involved with clinical studies where we are driving higher compliance rates to give better, more accurate clinical study outcomes. All marketing opportunities. And you don't have to do all this on your own. I realize not every pharmacy or every partner will have a marketing department and infinite resources to approach those. We're happy to help you with that at JFCRx to put those marketing programs together. We also see a lot of opportunity within the payers and provider groups to help them achieve success while you achieve success. A really interesting metric is that if you can improve just half a point with a payer who has 40,000 patients, that would drop on average about $8 million to their bottom line for those quality measurements. And if they're able to achieve a 5-star rating, not only do they have additional revenue coming into them that's extremely meaningful, but it also means they qualify for all year open enrollment, which means more patients and more profit. Pharmacy should be participating in that. And in order to do that, there are additional tools in the marketplace. One tool is simply going out and pulling data off of this data comes off of CMS.gov. Let's look at star ratings across different disease categories and therapeutic categories and where those payers have deficiencies. Now, this is a CMS published rate across the industry, but you can also find data or negotiate data with your payers in order to find where their star rating deficiencies are, help them bridge those gaps. And even if you aren't able to participate in a collaborative care revenue share type opportunity, which I do think you can, for a lot of these, where especially the ones where pharmacy is directly involved, for example, on MedRec or on statin therapy that you see on this particular slide, there are areas where pharmacy can absolutely engage and have a very strong argument for that rev share model. But there's also tools out there that lets you participate even more with the clinical billing side through collaborative care. One such example of that is a product in the market called Patientricity. This is offered by a partner company, JFCRx, called Tora. We have several mutual customers who are looking at this now, and it is a workflow solution to help identify and automate MTM and clinical billing workflows. So what happens is you pull in data from the pharmacy system and or EHR associated with a payer or provider. We run that data through rules engines and algorithms, kind of low-level AI, and it will identify patients who have interventions that can increase star ratings, close HEDIS gaps, and who have a revenue opportunity for pharmacy and providers. That's one example of new technology that has evolved in the market to help MTM and clinical billing be more successful. There's another group out there, another partnership company to JFCRx called EvolvedRx. And this company has a CRM platform on steroids that helps address the long-term care at home market in acquiring those patients and communicating with those patients and caregivers in the home market. EvolvedRx also has automation to help solve for data entry. So if you want to, it basically automates data entry by taking data and running it through a robotic process that automatically populates your pharmacy information system. When you do things like this, whether it's automating pharmaceutical packaging with JFC in your pharmacy, or whether it's automating digital workflows with EvolvedRx, those are all opportunities to free up that one or two techs or that one pharmacist that's going to allow you to go after this new revenue without necessarily increasing net new employees. At JFCRx, we have adherence packaging with multi-dose pouch, multi-dose blister. We have vial filling. One of the more important things we're doing is tying all of our solutions together under one comprehensive business intelligence platform, which we call Enlight. If you have multiple locations, or even if you have one location with multiple machines, one of the Achilles heels in the industry has always been that all of those pieces of automation are disparate, meaning if you have one medication come in and you enter that medication into your pharmacy system, you then have to enter it into your automation. And if you have multiple pieces of automation, you have to enter it manually multiple times. We're consolidating that at the business intelligence level. We consolidate it for order routing, we can consolidate it for reporting, we consolidate it for inventory management, and more. Now, one of the really important things when you look at pharmacy automation is that you can put a piece of automation in. So this happens to be our TruePak machine that does multi-dose pouch packaging. Putting the machine in is part of the battle, but making sure that your employee, your staff, your pharmacy design is conducive to that automation is also important. So when you partner with a company for automation, or if you already have automation, I still suggest that you have drilled down workflow conversations with partners like JFCRx in order to help fine tune your processes and make sure you're getting the most impact out of that investment that you've made. One example is that we've been partnering with a group who offers robotic delivery carts. So these robotic delivery carts can be used, for example, if you're doing multi-dose compliance packaging and you have just that multi-dose pack, whether it's pouch or blister, that's going out to a facility, a home, a skilled nursing building or otherwise, and there's no other items, there's no ampules, no injectables, nothing else. You could have those, when you take those out of quarantine and you pharmacists check them, rather than have them go into a tote process and then go into a fulfillment process where you're getting the rest of the items and moving it along, you could move these direct to a pack and ship location with this robotic cart without having that human intervention and paying people to do that extra walking when they can be doing more value-added activities. Another example of that, and taking automation to the next level, and getting the labor freed up to go after those diversified revenue opportunities is, for example, we sell a multi-dose card machine. It's a fantastic machine. It fills multi-dose, image verifies the pills to make sure you're filling the right pills in the right pockets. The next step is integrating that into, for example, conveyor systems, so that any items that are pre-verified and clean can move straight to pack and ship, and those that are not can move to a pharmacist check station or a rework station. If we have non-formulary items that you're manually filling, we can fill them manually and then route them to the machine to be input for trays. So again, sometimes buying the equipment is, it might be 75 or 85% of the battle, but it is still very valuable to have these conversations about how you build out your workflow to leverage them with the highest impact possible. And again, this is all about moving from spending your time, energy, labor, and dollars packaging medications to moving that labor and the brain trust of your company over into more value add MTM, clinical billing, consultative services that help keep you sticky with your payers and providers, but also help you, again, diversify and increase your total revenue. We also have a device that sorts pills that have not, for example, left the pharmacy. Even if they have left the pharmacy and you're a return reuse state, if we know that the pills were packaged in a multi-dose environment, yeah, they're commingled, but if they're not hazardous and you don't have certain restrictions in that regard, if they haven't left the pharmacy, you can open those multi-dose packs, whether it's, again, pouch or blister, pour them into a bin, and this machine will sort them by pill type with image verification, put them in a cup, and you can transfer that back over for canister refill in your automation, or you can package them into a package like this, adherence packaging, but all specific to one medication with lot and expiration date printed, and put it back on your shelf as general inventory. Again, we like to take all those technologies, whatever you're using, and roll them all up under our software platform called Enlight, which helps you with inventory management. It helps you with your process improvement, because we can now dashboard out and see how each one of your machines are performing in one site or across multiple locations. We have an open API access to your data. So again, tying back to diversified revenue, access to data, what does that get you? Why does that tie back to diversified revenue? It ties back in one example is that if we give you open access API to our database, you can start seeing, okay, I'm dispensing this drug and it has an impact for these patients, and it has an impact on, for example, calcium deficiency. We can now start making recommendations about prompting for a calcium integration into your pharmaceutical dispensing to help accommodate those things, and that can help with diversified revenue and increased margins on a nutraceutical product. So that's kind of a small one-off example, but sharing data is really the name of the game going forward, and then applying rules to it to help us monetize our patients better and provide better patient care. Those two things can walk hand in hand, and I think it's a great goal for us to have. This is an example, again, around continued efficiency. So we always want to look at how do we lower our cost to fill and become optimized. A lot of people will install automation and it's all good up front because it's been installed, it's clean, but over 6-8 months, you start seeing medication changes, generic swaps from wholesalers, and your buyers want you to buy the cheapest drug possible. That means it creates chaos in automation. We're trying to control for that chaos and keep you continually optimized by providing dashboards that show you what your daily trade totals are, what your canister medications are that are underutilized in canisters. So maybe you should switch those to tray and move trays to canisters. And we're giving you those tools to be continually optimized without the additional labor. Again, all ways to help you shift your focus over to that diversified revenue strategy. And I'll just conclude by saying that at the end of the Civil War, we had all those great innovations. And one thing I think you see a lot of in the market today is a lot of doom and gloom around whether it's DIR fees, PBMs, and the IRA cutting into the few profitable drugs that we have left. There's a lot of headwinds, but again, with that comes opportunity, and I think this is an opportunity for this whole industry to pivot towards diversified, higher margin, value add revenue that protects pharmacy for the long term. At the end of the Civil War, there was a little kid who was watching Abraham Lincoln's funeral procession on the tail end of a victorious war effort to reunite the country and make us a better country. And it inspired a young man named Teddy Roosevelt, who was in a little window watching down on that funeral procession. And he, of course, one day became president of the United States. And I think that's one of the things that we as an industry need to be striving for, is making those changes and showing the future generations of pharmacy how this can be successful and how we pivot with the times and with the trials to be successful. And with that, I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please reach out to JFCRx. Thank you very much.